Okay, so 5 ways on how to invest £25,000 in property coming up. So welcome back. We're talking about the top 5 ways to invest £25,000 in property. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Marco. I'm a property investor, developer and mentor. And today we're going to be talking about ways to invest roughly around £25,000 in property. You know, if you've got 20, if you've got £30,000, these strategies will still apply. So you join me in the cockpit today. I got a call from a good friend of mine who's an agent. We've been working together about 3 or 4 years. He called me last night at 5 to 5 on a Thursday afternoon saying, Marco, I've got a really good opportunity. I need you to come view this property tomorrow. The vendor needs to complete on this sale. It's just fallen through and we've literally got 2 weeks to complete on it. You know, can you help? So I'm going to go down there today. I'm going to see if I can help out. It was going to be over a 3-hour journey one way by the car, but it's 36 minutes by air. Any excuse to fly, I'll always take it. Now, I've got a few minutes spare before I'm doing my pre-takeoff checks, and I thought now's a really good time to do a video on top 5 ways to invest £25,000 in property. And I'm going to highlight 5 strategies you can invest in property, and hopefully you can choose the one that best resonates and feels that best suits your skill set. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1 is by buying cash and buying outright. Now this is a slightly tricky thing to do with only £25,000 because, as you probably are aware, there aren't many properties in the UK to purchase around this price point. The average property price in the UK is nearly 10 times that figure. So again, if you've got £25,000 and you want to buy in cash, well, that really limits you to what you can buy. Maybe you're buying completely run down and smaller properties in low value areas. And even with that criteria, there's still not going to be many properties that are only £25,000 to purchase. Now, the other option is to think slightly outside the box here. Well, maybe it doesn't have to be a house. Could it be a garage of some kind? A friend of mine recently bought some garages for slightly below this figure, and you know, you could do something similar and maybe rent the garages out. One thing I would note here is, before we move on, is buying properties cash and these lower value properties, say, you know, not even around the 25,000 mark, but maybe say 25 to 50,000 pounds. Typically these properties tend to be more problematic properties in areas that have very poor capital appreciation. And really, do we want to be investing in these types of properties? Well, it all depends what type of strategy you're undergoing. So let's move on to the second way on how we can invest that £25,000 into property, a way that I certainly recommend and probably deliver a better return for you. So number 2 is buying a property with a buy-to-let mortgage. Now, the beauty about this is if we've only got £25,000 and we want to invest in property, we can leverage. What this means is we can use finance and borrow money to make this happen. We don't need to buy this property outright in cash. And I've got a really good video that explains the difference between buying in cash outright and buying with a mortgage, and it breaks down the figures. I use a really clear and easy example to follow. I'll link to it in the description, and please do watch this video after you've watched this one, and it really will help you understand on why you really should be buying with a mortgage and how it's going to better your return on investment. Okay, enough said there. So if we're buying with a mortgage, this is basically how it works. Now let's use some easy numbers. Let's say we're buying a property for £80,000. Again, that doesn't sound like a lot, but there are some places, especially in the north of the UK, where you can buy a property around that price point. But I'm just using this to illustrate the figures and to show you that it's possible. Now, if we're getting a mortgage and a loan for 75% of the purchase price, or 75% of 80,000 is £60,000. So the bank is giving us £60,000 and we have to put in the remaining, which is 25% of the purchase price, which is £20,000. So we're putting in £20,000 deposit, bank's giving us £60,000 mortgage, and that adds up to £80,000 and we can afford to purchase this property. Absolutely great. I know what you're thinking now. You're thinking, Marco, but there's still £5,000 left over. Where's that going? You know, I can spend this, I can invest this. Well, this is where it's going to go. Unfortunately, there are other fees you need to account for when you're purchasing property, and especially purchasing using a mortgage. So the first of all is, regardless if you're purchasing with a mortgage or not, you're going to have to pay your legal fees. And for a property purchase, you're probably looking at about £1,500. Then you've got your mortgage broker fee. You're going to have to pay him or her a fee for their work. You know, it could be around, say, £500. And then you've got stamp duty. And again, stamp duty, that that level. I'm not going to get the calculator out, but it could be about £2,500, something like that. So once you've added all those little fees together, and some aren't too little, let's face it, sometimes stamp duty can be quite large, you're looking at about £5,000, slightly under that in fees. So once you add that to your deposit, which is £20,000, there you have it, your £25,000, give or take. Now this is a really great way to invest in property because you can spread your cash as thinly as possible. So let's say we've moved on 12 months from now, you managed to get another £20,000 or £25,000. Well, you can just rinse and repeat the same process and start buying property, buying buy-to-let property with mortgages and grow your portfolio. And the nice thing about this strategy is you're only putting in a 25% deposit, but you're benefiting from 100% of the capital appreciation. Is absolutely phenomenal. It's a crazy thing that you can do. So, over the 5, 10, 20 years, the value of this property should hopefully increase and you can benefit from 100% of that capital appreciation, even though you'd only put in a 25% deposit. I hope that makes sense. So if you're looking to find out a bit more about buy-to-let property and in terms of growing a portfolio using finance and leverage, feel free to head to my website www.ms7.uk. I'm more than happy to help. I'm very passionate about helping people get into property and scale portfolios. And we haven't even talked about refinancing in this video, and that's another way how we can further scale our portfolio once we have a couple of properties on board. So again, I've got another video about refinancing. I'll link to it in the description. It's really good, really important to watch. And for those of you that have never done a remortgage or a refinance before, it's such a powerful way to scale your property investment journey. Okay, number 3, the third way to invest at least, say, £25,000 in property is by joint venturing with someone else. And you may say, well, Marco, why should I do this? Well, here's my answer. In some areas of the UK, £25,000, even if you're buying with a mortgage, isn't going to get you the property that you want and that's going to deliver a return for you. Especially if you're in the south and you're very focused on obtaining property in the south and you're not interested in the Midlands or the north, well, good luck getting a property for, less than £100,000 is probably just not going to happen. So in instances like this, consider joint venturing with someone. Let's say you've got £25,000, they have £25,000, pull your money together. Let's say you've got £50,000, well, maybe you're able to get a property. This is why I strongly consider going for a joint venture, because at least you're going to get a property on board, providing you've found someone to partner with who has complementary skill sets and also can contribute funds to the deal. And it's really important that you have complementary skill sets. You don't want the same skill set. You don't want to be, both brilliant at numbers and poor at everything else. One of you wants to be really good on the numbers side. Maybe the other is a bit more hands-on and understands the maintenance side and has really good trade connections. So you really want to complement each other, come together and create something that is greater than the individual parts. And this is where joint venturing is so important, because if you've got two people come together, work together and bring different things to the table and different strengths, you can achieve something that is far greater than you would have achieved individually. Okay, number 4 on how to invest £25,000 in property is via the auction and actually purchasing in auction using bridging finance. Now, disclaimer, this is risky. This is certainly a strategy I do not recommend if you're new in property and not necessarily familiar with how bridging finance works. So please do use this strategy with caution. I'd hate for someone to watch this video, buy their first property in auction using a bridge. Don't get me wrong, it could work, but there are serious downsides to it, and I'm going to talk about this right now. So what is a bridge? A bridge is where you're obtaining short-term finance. So maybe you're financing the acquisition of this property for say 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 months, something like that. It's what's termed short-term finance. And there are a number of reasons why we want to do this. Well, first of all, if you're buying an auction and you're buying under auction conditions, most transactions require that you complete within 28 days. There are some that will require that you complete in even less, in 14 days. And because of this, it's very difficult to buy at auction with a typical standard buy-to-let mortgage, because it's just not going to complete within those 28 days. So this is why we use what's called bridging finance to bridge that gap. We go to specialist lenders and they'll lend. They're really fast, they're really quick, and they'll lend you that money for that short term, but it is typically more expensive than standard traditional buy-to-let mortgages. And this is why I say use this strategy with caution, because you don't want to be stuck on this short-term finance and you're unable to exit this finance because you haven't accurately and properly thought through your strategy for this property. And when you're buying a property in the auction, especially using bridging finance, you want at least least 2 or 3 exits. Because what you want to think about is, well, if my primary exit fails, how can I leave this bridging finance and still be up on this property, and this property still is generating a profit for me? Maybe we had planned to sell it, but actually it hasn't sold for whatever reason. Can we keep it and rent it out and change the finance onto a standard long-term buy-to-let mortgage, which reduces that monthly interest rate, and all of a sudden that property is delivering a profit? So it's really important you want various exits when you're buying property with bridging. But nevertheless, the reason why I say this is a great way to invest in property, and if you've only got around £25,000, is because some bridgers, they will lend on the market value of that property as opposed to the purchase price. And this is absolutely crucial. And for those of you that don't know what the difference is, the purchase price is obviously the price you've agreed to buy this property for. And let's just throw some figures out there. Let's say you've agreed to purchase a property for £100,000, but actually maybe it's worth £200,000. That's what you think the property is worth. Well, you can ask a bridging lender to lend you money based on the market value rather than the purchase price. So what this means is you have to put even less money into the deal to make this happen. Now, of course, you're borrowing more money, so the interest payable is going to be far higher, but again, depending on what type of strategy and how much profit there is in the deal, there's still a lot of money to be made. So this is one way where I'd say consider using bridging finance if you can borrow based on the market price of the property rather than the purchase price. Because what this means is you'll be putting less money in, and that money could be around the tune of £25,000. Okay, so the last way to invest £25,000 in property is actually to lend it and loan it to someone to invest. As we've mentioned so far in these videos, there are only a certain number of strategies and properties really that are available to purchase around that price point. Again, in the north there are quite a few to choose from, but if you're down south, it's going to be very difficult to find a property around that price point. And because of this, and because maybe you don't want to necessarily buy in cash, you may consider lending it to someone else. They'll invest it, and then they'll pay you back based on whatever your agreement is. So it could be a typical loan agreement where you're loaning it to an investor and they're paying you back a fixed return every single year, irregardless of how much money they make investing it. So again, that's an option. Obviously, that's a nice hands-free way of making an income as well, because you're not getting involved in the property. However, some people really want to learn about property. They want to get their hands dirty and they want to be involved and learn as much as they possibly can. So again, there are pros and cons to loaning out your money. And if you do loan out your money, make sure you've got a very nice solid contract and everything, all the legals are in place, and it's you're conducting proper due diligence on who you're loaning that money to. So to recap, we've spoken about 5 top ways on how to invest £25,000 in property. The first is by buying outright with cash. The second is buying with a mortgage, with a buy-to-let standard mortgage. The third is by joint venturing with someone who's also got a similar amount of cash. The fourth is by buying at auction with bridging finance, and the fifth is by lending your money to someone else. So I hope this video has really added value to your property investing questions. And for those of you that haven't already subscribed to the channel, I'll please ask you to consider subscribing. It really does mean a lot to me. And if you're looking to grow a buy-to-let portfolio, this is what I specialise in. So head to my website, www.ms7.uk, book a call with me. I'm more than happy to help you in your property investing journey. For those of you who don't already follow the channel, you'll know that I release videos on a Tuesday and Thursday every single week at 2 o'clock. So stay in tune for those. I hope these videos are really helping you invest in property, maybe giving you a slightly different insight and maybe allowing you to think on slightly different things. So enjoy your day, and I wish you all the very best.